Hello there, beautiful people. I'm Tracy Rigdon, and this is the Contrast Project Lounge podcast. In this episode, going to be talking with local author, writer, entrepreneur, Mr. Bill DeLaney. Bill's first book, Secret Jacksonville, A Guide to the Weird, Wonderful, and Obscured, is dedicated to telling the stories behind some forgotten, mysterious, and just plain interesting spots across Jacksonville, St. Augustine, Florida's first coast, Northeast Florida. We'll also talk about his involvement in as editor and co-owner of JaxonMag, Modern Cities, and Edible Northeast Florida. Y'all ready for this? Let's go. Joining me now on the program is Mr. Bill DeLaney. Bill, thank you for being with us today on the podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've been following your writing. I get Jackson's in my feed all the time, and I read those and Modern Cities, and have been reading for some time. And how are you doing with all that? I know you're doing some secret Jacksonville walking tours now.
Yeah, that's right. So we do about 4 or 5 articles a week on the Jackson. We also do walking tours to different neighborhoods. And then in connection with my book, Secret Jacksonville, I do Secret Jacksonville walking tours that are like once a month. I'll take people downtown to some of the weird, wonderful, and obscure sites that you can find there.
It's amazing. If people aren't from around here, or even if they are, it's so many of the different oddities, you might say, that can be found in the city, and not just in the urban core, but in and around the surrounding area of Northeast Florida.
Yeah, that's right. It's all over the place. When I wrote the book, the region I picked was everywhere from Cumberland Island down to Marineland.
So in the book, am I correct? And there are like 84, 85 different instances of interesting people, places, things, in the Northeast Florida area.
Yeah, that's right. It's 84 different vignettes of unusual stories and sites all across Jacksonville. Like I said, from Cumberland Island up in the north down to Marineland, so all across the region. And what I did was I ended up, I made a list to start with of all the things that I would like to cover if I could, and then I winnowed it down from there. And so the benefit of that, it was sad to have to cut things that I really wanted to write about, but the benefit was that I could pick and choose what I wanted to do and make sure I represented lots of different neighborhoods in there.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you think about a lot of people might think that some of the oddest things around town are just completely obscure, like in the title of the book, and the obscure. But really, a lot of these things are up under our noses around here.
Yeah, they are. That's the thing. The secrets aren't usually secrets to everybody. Somebody knows it. Sometimes they know it really well. And some of these things are like well known in a neighborhood or a particular side of town or a particular community, but aren't as well known across the whole wider spectrum of people from Jacksonville. And so that was a very fun part of it for me to do, was to try to find some of these, neighborhood treasures and put them in context with all the other things that are in the book, so that people could get like a fuller picture of what the city really is about.
Right, right. It actually is a really good guide for people that want to go out and spend some time on the weekends, or even tourists that may pick up a copy of it and come to town and find some really interesting things in there to go take a look at, rather than just using, one of your regular, maps of the city that just has little pinpoints on it.
Yeah, that was the goal, was to try to give people a taste of some things that wouldn't normally make the Chamber of Commerce brochures and stuff like that.
And not the least of which is right there on the cover is our big orange dinosaur.
That's right, Sexy Rexy. That's the official name of the dinosaur. It's chosen by a newspaper contest. At the time that the strip mall behind him was being built. For those of you who are not familiar with Sexy Rexy, the orange dinosaur, he's a former mini golf obstacle from a Goonie
Yep.
Golf mini golf chain. And when that went defunct, the owners were going to turn it into a strip mall. But Rexy, because he was right up against the street, he was very visible from the street, and he became a landmark. People were really upset that he might be torn down. So the strip mall just kept him, and now he's just in the parking lot of this strip mall. And they fixed him up. They made his eyes light up again, and they painted him, and they did a newspaper contest for his name. And so the official name, according to the people of Jacksonville, is Sexy Rexy.
Well, I guess that probably makes me a dinosaur to say that I actually played at that Goonie Golf.
Oh, I did too. Yeah, so I'm right there with you as a dinosaur.
There were so many little places like that around town that only some of us can remember, and some will remember from their
Right.
childhood. They're like, "Oh, I think my dad took me to that," But it's
Yeah,
very
right.
interesting. Hey, let me ask you a question there, Bill. When it came to
Sure.
when you started the research for the book, what kind of work were you doing, in writing beforehand, your experience in writing, and what really made you? I know you said to give people an idea about Jacksonville and some of the oddities, but what kind of gave you a little, jolt to really dive into it and write the book?
Yeah, so you kind of started about 8 years ago. I'd always knew that I wanted to have a writing career, and I was wrapping up grad school, and I wanted to really get it in gear and get it started. And I had a couple of different areas of interest, and one of them has always been writing these stories about Jacksonville's history and the unusual
Mm-hmm.
things that have happened here and our culture and all of that. And at that time, there just turned out there weren't very many publications that were doing stories like that, especially that were
Mm-hmm.
willing to pay writers to do those stories. And ultimately, I figured that if that didn't exist, let's make one. And so I got together with some of my friends that had owned a website called Modern Cities, and I pitched the
Mm-hmm.
idea of doing a Jacksonville focused site that would focus on Jacksonville's urban issues, our culture, and our history. And, they liked the idea, so we put it in motion. It's called the
Mm-hmm.
JaxonMag.com. And once we got that going, WJCT, which is our local NPR affiliate, wanted to partner with us. And so it became a kind of a co-project where, between our group and WJCT. So all that is to say, I had a place that I could do the type of stories that I had always wanted to do. I always just kind of felt that there would be interest in these types of stories if there was just a place for people to find them. And it's proven to be
Mm-hmm.
true. And so as far as the book goes, I've been writing for a couple of years, doing stories on the Jackson and some other publications. And my editor from Reedy Press called me up, and they are a small independent press out in St. Louis, and they do these books that are kind of local interest of all kinds of cities all over the country. Mm-hmm. And they had focused mainly in bigger cities, and they wanted to go into more of the mid-sized cities, and they wanted to get into Jacksonville. And so they called me up and they say, hey, we have this line of books that are, about the secrets of cities, weird, wonderful, and obscure. Would you be interested in writing it? And for me, like, that's the kind of stuff that I love to research and write, whether I have a book deal or not. So I immediately just jumped at the chance, and I went from there.
Yeah. And that was, if I remember correctly, that was from like a 6-part series of books that they did, or did they do more?
It's more than that now. They have, just in Florida alone, they have a Secret Tampa, a Secret Orlando is it's coming out soon if it isn't out already, and a Secret Miami. So they have them in lots of different markets at this point. It's been a pretty popular series for them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so you mentioned that you had started the Jackson with a pretty solid group of fellas right there at Modern Cities. And so the JaxonMag essentially continues on with some of the stuff that Modern Cities has been doing. And I know some of the stories do, kind of bounce off of each other in one way or another, but the Jackson gives us a little bit more, a closer tie, and the stories tend to be a little bit in depth. And I noticed that Modern Cities have done some fantastic articles with lots of pictorials. But the Jackson happens to be one of my personal favorites, by the way.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Oh, it is. I'm not pulling your leg. Now, I know that when it comes down to it, writing this kind of stuff puts you really in some good company of some local historians.
Yeah, it definitely does. There's, I think, a much bigger community of historians, past and present, than a lot of people realize. There's a lot of people that are out there, really talented writers and researchers that are doing some really incredible work.
Oh yeah. The Jacksonville Historical Society with Dr. Wayne Wood, and of course another person that did the downtown walking tours in the Urban Core, Gary Sass, very knowledgeable about urban core development.
That's right. Yeah, so, there's them. There's Tim Gilmore, a good friend of mine.
Yeah, Tim.
Does,
oh yeah,
He's written. He's written. I think 20, 22, if not more, books at this point. 22. Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, and his stories are really in depth, and they read like novels.
They do. Yeah. Yeah, he's really great at painting the scenes of the city, especially kind of the other side of the tracks and the lost history.
Oh yeah, like Otis Toole and the old graveyard downtown. He made it look romantic.
Yes.
So what do you have any plans for the future, going beyond to maybe another book that you're thinking about? I know you're going to continue to work with the Jackson, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely continuing to work with the Jackson. I think we have a really great group. We have a lot of fun doing it, and we get good responses when we put stuff out. As far as books go, I definitely am planning on writing more. I'm actually in talks with my publisher now to talk about it. We have a couple of ideas that we're spinning, but nothing firm, nothing decided yet. But you will see another book from me coming out before too long.
Fabulous. When we talk about urbanization, and the urban core of Jacksonville in particular. Some of the pluses and minuses that we've seen, and a lot of infrastructure changes going on now, kind of slowly, but there's some projects that are getting finished. Uh, when we talk about that, and I know that, like I mentioned earlier, the modern cities uh, delves into the urbanization of different areas. How do you see the city of Jacksonville, Northeast Florida? I will say, let's just say Northeast Florida to include Jacksonville, Fernandina,
Mhm.
St. Augustine. The whole Northeast area there, Northeast Florida area. How do you see uh, these areas moving forward in their projects with urbanization, the pluses and minuses to it?
So I think the one thing that's going to be constant for the foreseeable future is we're going to continue to see a huge amount of growth here.
Oh yeah.
Um, it's it's just like wildfire, and it's spreading all through the surrounding counties. Now, I think one of the issues that we need to decide, and we need to do it quickly, is what shape we want that growth to take. We're not going to be able to keep people from moving to Florida short of, putting border patrol on the Georgia line or something like that.
Right.
But we can shape the direction that the growth takes. And that is by doing smarter planning. That's by doing more infill in areas that have, declined or lost population,
Mm-hmm.
densifying some areas so that you don't have just endless miles of sprawl. You can have a
Right.
much more, intentional and attractive community.
Mm-hmm. Uh, Another thing that I had talked about the other night with one of my guests, and we were talking about some of the things that Donna Deegan has right at the top of her list as she's running for mayor, is infrastructure, and within that, umbrella, the affordable housing crisis in the area, which is pretty much everywhere. Uh, and you mentioned infill just now, and I noticed that there's another housing project going up on Myrtle Avenue.
Yeah, that's right. There is. Yeah, and as far as infill goes, like one thing I don't think people really understand the scope of is how many people the urban core has lost. And the
Mm-hmm.
urban core, meaning the neighborhoods of Jacksonville's old city limits before consolidation merged it with the whole
Right.
county. Those
Right.
neighborhoods used to have twice as many people in 1950 as they do today. They had straight population decline every census until 2010. So they went from being more than 200,000 people in those neighborhoods, the central
Mm-hmm.
neighborhoods, to it's down to just over 100,000 now. So
Right.
that is a massive decline, but it's also an immense opportunity because that means that we have the basic infrastructure in place already for twice as many people as live in the urban core now. We have the streets laid out, we got the basic sewage and power hookups, all that stuff is already there. Of course, there's a lot
Right.
more that needs to be done, but it's still, you're starting with a leg up when you're doing it in a place that already has all of that versus just plowing another forest down to build a bunch of suburban tract homes.
Right. Right. And also one of the things I noticed too, where they talk about the downtown area, the riverfront, both North and South Bank, they trying to figure out what to do down there with housing. And there's been some plans on the drawing board for a large housing complex over on the South Bank, and they had toyed with the idea too over there where the old landing site was. At one point, there was some drawings on the table there for a high rise. However, what I see in those types of buildings, however lovely they are, those are certainly not. Now they may bring people with higher mid to higher incomes, uh, because there's certainly not going to be affordable housing for an awful lot of the citizenry.
Yeah, and that's very true. Like our biggest need is affordable housing. But the thing is, we're in the middle of a housing crisis in this state, and
Mm-hmm.
it's really national and even international. But Florida is being especially affected because it's so high growth. But the reason that things have gotten so out of whack is that the supply of housing is just so much lower than the demand, the people that want to move here. So any housing will help. So any housing is good. So I say, like, they want to build luxury apartments, let them do it, and if they can't charge luxury rates, they'll lower the rates. At least it'll be built. But you also have to do that with intention. You have to look at things like building workforce housing, using, tapping into federal loans and grants and the state Sadowski Fund to make sure that you're also building enough homes for lower income folks to be able to live.
Right, and the city has on many occasions. You mentioned funding, federal money. The city of Jacksonville has done on many occasions turned down much of the federal funding that is available to us that could be made available.
Yeah. Like, we have not been good at drawing our own tax dollars back here. We pay the feds, but then the powers that be decide that they don't want it, and so they don't. What often happens is they don't even really seek it. They don't really go out and find it.
Mm-hmm.
There was one grant that it was a pilot project. Sorry, go on.
Go ahead.
Oh, so there's one grant recently. It was a pilot project, and the idea there was to reconnect neighborhoods that have been disrupted by highways getting built through them. Because back in the Jim Crow era, highways were one way they used to enforce segregation and to demolish Black and working class neighborhoods. And the idea of this grant program was you get federal resources to turn some of that back. In our city, we have plenty of that all over the place. You can see it. We have these huge highways, I-95, I-10, you have State and Union Street, just these huge highways that just kind of blast through our urban neighborhoods. And we originally weren't even going to even ask for the money. It's like, it's one thing to ask for the money and not get it, but it's a total other thing to just say, we can go without this. I think that's really crazy.
Yeah. It just doesn't make sense, to not go after any kind of grants or programs that the state or federal government can't help the city do. It just doesn't make sense not to go after it.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lick of sense. I mean, it's our tax dollars. All we're doing is trying to get them back through these programs, and especially when it's programs like that can really help us with a need that we have. We need to be just going to bat for it every day, no matter who's in the White House, no matter who's in the mayor's office. We need to be getting our money back.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you another long-winded question here. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on the future of Jacksonville as it's growing, like we just talked about, growing in population, more people moving here and that kind of thing? What are your thoughts on the future of Jacksonville as becoming more of a destination city, as it's been touted in some magazines, calling it a destination city? What do you see about that, the future of that?
So I see there's a lot of opportunities all over the entire city and the entire region. One thing I think that we've always struggled in is in the urban core and downtown. We spend similar amounts of money to places like Nashville and Indianapolis, Charlotte, Greenville, South Carolina, these places that have far more active downtowns than we do. Even though we've spent the same amount of money, we just haven't been getting over the hump. And that's a recurring problem with us, is not really having the vision, not doing the simple things that when you get simple things right, a lot more happens. It builds off of each other. We've spent years talking about how we need to make our downtown streets two ways again. They turned them into one-way streets long ago. They want to make them back into two-way streets. It's like, okay, great. that isn't rocket science. Lots of other cities have done this. Why are we still sitting on our hands and not doing it? Like, that's the kind of low-hanging fruit that you need. But that said, on top, outside of the urban core, there's plenty of areas, even within the urban core in some cases, there's plenty of areas that are really taking off. And I think there's a much bigger desire for celebrating ourselves and the things that we do here, our culture, the things that we produce. There's a much bigger desire for that than there ever has been probably in the city's history. People are really down to do, Jacksonville things. And so neighborhoods like Riverside and Murray Hill and Springfield, and they're really booming with businesses and, eateries, and they're becoming destinations on their own. And then you got stuff like, the Jacksonville beaches. We have about the best beaches in a state known for its beaches, best and most accessible. And that's already a pretty big attraction. That's only going to continue. And so we have huge opportunities. There are some things that are advancing faster than others, but even the things that we're kind of behind the eight ball on, downtown development, again, this isn't rocket science. We start making the right decisions, that's going to happen. It's going to turn around a lot faster, I think, than people really realize.
Yeah, you had mentioned Charlotte and Greenville. You're absolutely right. Those urban core areas in those towns are actually they're quite nice, and they have a thriving nightlife. They have, like you say, the eateries and places for people to go and things for people to do. And it just seems like we do have a great opportunity in the downtown area and Riverside and other areas as well to spark that same kind of interest. There's plenty of nice old neighborhoods that would love to have more bustling retail near them, to revive walking neighborhoods.
Yeah, we have all the bones. We have better bones than a lot of the cities that have more vibrant downtowns. We have our urban core kicks the ass of the urban core of Orlando, for instance.
Oh.
We just have a lot more neighborhoods, a lot cooler architecture, but they have focused a lot of effort on bringing their downtown back, making it a walkable destination place. And we just haven't really been able to make it happen. And it's really sad when you go around the country and you see that plenty of cities of all sizes, cities that are our size, cities that are bigger, cities that are smaller, and at this point most of them have more active downtowns than we do. And you just have to think, with all of the amazing things that are happening in Jacksonville every day, how are we not getting that right? And I have thoughts on why, but why do we accept it? Why do we allow this to keep happening?
Right. Yeah, just having let's say the concerts on the lawn downtown, the free concerts for the town, kind of carrying on what we used to have at Metropolitan Park, but that only lasts for so many nights. And then you have the art walk, which is once a month, which is fantastic and fun, one night a month. It would be nice to see more things along those lines, because you do have the Jesse. There is art installed in the Jesse. There are people that have the literary groups that go in there and have readings in the Jesse in the lobby. There's all kinds of things to do downtown that still could be done without having to have an overabundance of bars up and down Bay Street. Because I heard somebody say that the other day. Oh boy, another bar.
Yeah, well, I'm all about more bars, but I think you're totally right. I mean, it shows whenever we have these events, people turn up. Whenever they do the concerts on the Lenny's lawn, people show up. When there's art walk every month, rain or shine, folks show up. People have the desire to do it, so it's obviously not that, and it's not any of the other things they blame. People blame crime, It's like, well, it's not stopping these people from coming down here.
Yeah.
What is stopping them from coming more? That's the real question. And I think that Lenny's Lawn concerts are a great example, because the concerts are fun. They're great events. People that go love them. But
Mm-hmm.
to make that happen involved demolishing the landing, spending more than $25 million in the city's money to demolish the landing. And the landing wasn't in great shape at the time it was demolished.
Mm-hmm.
But even at its lowest point, the landing was more active than that empty lawn is. They had concerts every week. They had bars and restaurants and a whole concert venue in there.
Yep.
And and restaurants. It was the only place in downtown that still had a cluster of restaurants that were open nights and weekends. And so, we can say, rightly, that the concerts down there are a lot of fun and they're really great to have. But you got to look back at the whole picture. Why didn't we have that on top of having the landing and fixing the landing up and all the amenities that it has?
Yeah.
Why do we have to remove something to bring something new in? We should be just adding.
Well, Jacksonville likes to tear down buildings. They're tearing down the Ford factory.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, just wrote about that one. It's
right.
Yeah, it's a sad case. It's one of those things that we recognized for a long time was historically important, an old Ford assembly plant right on the river. And we didn't really put the money into it. We didn't hold the owners accountable for letting it get dilapidated. And now we have a new, a possible new project coming in, and they're just going to demolish the entire site for it, which, the new project, is supposed to be a shipyards. If that happens, that would be great. But, once again, why do we keep removing things? We take two steps, one step forward, two steps back.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, listen, Bill, I got one more question for you before I let you go.
Sure thing.
What would you say? Yeah, man. What would you say? Tips and advice. You're in higher education, and you're around students, I'm sure, all the time. What would be some of your tips and some of your advice you would give to people that are aspiring to become writers, whether it be fiction or even a guidebook like the one that you wrote?
Yeah, so I say the biggest thing is to just keep doing it, keep honing your craft, and once you start to get that kind of work to, one thing that I did was I looked for a day job. Like you said, I have a day job at, in marketing at UNF. I looked for something that could, that could work together with my writing, using the same kind of skills and, and boost myself. So I think that's one good piece of advice is whatever you do, understand as a writer, you're likely going to need a day job, but you can always try to find day jobs that work with the writing rather than things that are totally different or don't really get you where you want to go.
Yeah, it's a competitive market out there for good writers. You know what? I did want to bring up something while we were on the subject of writing. I've been asking a lot of people about this lately, about the Chat GPT and the use of it by a lot of people as a tool. And have you fooled around with it? I'm sure you have. And what are your thoughts on that as people start using it more and more to write material or content for the web, for that matter?
Yeah, I think that it's got uses that are going to be great. I'm not a programmer, but I understand that it can be great at, writing a whole bunch of code that otherwise would take a human all day to do. But from what I've seen and read about it, all it really can do is regurgitate. It doesn't have new ideas. It pulls together what the next likeliest word is based on all of the data fed into it. So, without the data that humans create, ChatGPT, doesn't work. So I can see that there's probably going to cause some big changes in some areas of writing, but it's a long way off from being the kind of writing that, like, that can write a journalistic expose on an important issue, or that can create a great work of literature. It's decades away from that.
Yeah. Well, it also, in order to get anything detailed that's halfway decent to come out of it, to be generated for you, you have to put in an awful lot of information in the question bar. It's not just asking a simple question. You really do have to put in a lot of information for it to come back with something of any substance.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. That's what it really is. It's a tool. It's a tool like any other tool. It isn't something that can replace a human mind or whatever. It doesn't even know what it's doing. They call it artificial intelligence, but it's really not very intelligent. But it can be a useful tool because it can collate all of this data and help you write something like that when you have all of the right prompts and when you know enough to see that it has stated confidently something that is totally wrong. You need to be able to spot that because it has no way of doing it.
Right. And they're already starting, a lot of people with copyright laws and plagiarism, they're starting to look at that. There are some people that are calling a lot of that stuff blatant plagiarism, and some people are saying that it's not because a computer is writing it. But then again, there are legal authorities that are starting to look at it a little closer to see what part of it is, is it plagiarism? I was reading an article today. This one fellow on social media said that he wrote a book in 2 hours. and somebody commented, "No, you didn't write a book in 2 hours. A computer did."
Yeah, there's lots of amusing stories like that. I remember a guy who wrote in a weekend an entire children's book that was written and illustrated by a computer, but when you look at it, you're like, wow, he did that really fast, but it sucks.
Yeah, it can be a bad thing. Things in moderation. There are still people that aren't going to use it at all, and I mess around with it because I think I get a kick out of it. But most of the stuff I don't even use. But I tell you, it's been wonderful talking to you, Bill, and you're welcome to come back on the podcast anytime.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Tracy.
You bet. You have a great evening.
All right. You too.
I'd like to thank all my friends, fans, and followers over on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Please don't forget to like, share, and comment. And on our YouTube channel, like, share, comment, and smash the subscribe button. Don't forget to ring that bell so you get notifications whenever we have a new episode come up. And don't forget that the podcast itself, the audio version, can be streamed on all major streaming platforms. And you can find my crazy shenanigans over on TikTok. That was a wonderful conversation I had with Bill. We talked about a myriad of subjects there, but right at the top of my list that I want to go over in my closing thoughts is the book that he wrote about secret Jacksonville and its importance. It's a guidebook to some interesting places, people, things in and around Jacksonville that I think anyone would be interested in having a copy of. As well as going on some of the walking tours, and there are lots of other good books and good articles. You can read tons of articles in the JaxonMag that he is editor of and co-owner. The Modern Cities, he is editor of that. and co-owner, and Edible Northeast Florida. And I mean, there's just a myriad of things. If you can't find something interesting and or fun to do in and around the Northeast Florida area, I honestly believe you're just not trying. As always, in the meantime, folks, take care of yourselves and each other. Until next time, peace.